By now, most people are aware of Trump's announcement of the Stargate project, initially a $500 billion investment from some serious tech billionaires into AI and the future of AI in America. We want to air you a little bit of that announcement now, just in case you missed it.
It's my honor to welcome three of the world's leading technology CEOs. And in the case of Larry Ellison, it's well beyond technology. He's sort of CEO of everything. He's an amazing man, an amazing business person. But to announce the largest AI infrastructure project by far in history, and it's all taking place right here in America. As you know, there's great competition for AI and other things, and they're coming in at the highest level. We're joined by Oracle Executive Chairman Larry Ellison, SoftBank CEO, my friend Masayoshi son, and CEO of OpenAI, and I would say by far the leading expert based on everything I read, Sam Altman. So that's great that you're coming in together. That's a massive group of talent and money. Together, these world-leading technology giants are announcing the formation of Stargate. So put that name down in your books, because I think you're going to hear a lot about it in the future. A new American company that will invest $500 billion at least in AI infrastructure in the United States, and very, very quickly, moving very rapidly, creating over 100,000 American jobs almost immediately.
What does this all mean? What's it all going to look like? A lot of people are positive. A lot of people are very concerned. We also have the added element of Larry Ellison's announcement about AI-powered mRNA cancer vaccines. And this is a very serious concern, particularly because of the disaster during COVID, but mRNA technology as a whole. One of the best people I know to talk about this is former Pfizer employee and biotech analyst Karen Kingston. She joins us after this short break. Are you using your phone, or is it using you? In 2020, a team of technologists, designers, and creatives working within the freedom movement found evidence that phones are listening to our conversations, tracking our movements, and targeting us with ads. They knew they needed to do something to protect their communities, and they began researching. Soon, they had put together a comprehensive privacy phone solution that does more than normal phones without tracking you. Above Phone was born. Today, thousands of people are using Above Phone. By default, there's no logins, no advertisements, and zero connections to big tech. It works with any cell service anywhere on Earth, and you can keep your number. Download your favorite apps privately or unlock a world of new private apps with more features. Secure hardware protects you, and enhanced software gives you total control over your microphone, camera, sensors, and apps. We're excited for our exclusive partnership with Above Phone. They're offering us the best phones available at the lowest prices, bundled with essential gear. To better safeguard your freedom, purchase Above Suite, easy-to-use services that integrate with the phone. These services run on their private data center, and you get a VPN that protects your internet traffic from surveillance, a private email, calendar and video conferencing, encrypted chat and calls, and an anonymous search engine. If you need help with technology, don't fear. Above Phone offers the best support out there. Every phone comes with a free 45-minute live call with a real support engineer to help you with the transition. Plus, gain immediate access to detailed guides, video courses, and email and chat support. Feel the power in taking back your technology. Use Above Phone's tools and education to rise above surveillance and break free of the control grid. Privacy and freedom are non-negotiable rights for you, your families, and your communities. Above Phone have created exclusive deals for Z Media viewers, letting you access savings you won't get anywhere else. Purchase now at abovephone.com/Maria. That's abovephone.com/Maria. Karen Kingston, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Maria. It's always an honor to speak with you and your audience.
It's great to have you. And I think that you're the perfect guest to have this conversation because you have been investigating the dangers of these injections and mRNA technology for quite some time. Your insight is, particular because of your work as a biotech analyst, but you also understand synthetic biology and this merge between humans and AI. So I think that let's just talk about your initial concerns following this announcement from President Trump about the Stargate project.
Well, my biggest concern is that, to my knowledge, not since the Rockefellers bailed out America in the 1920s, we now have billionaires investing in America. And specifically, this is done under the 1950 Defense Act. So that gives the president the right to allocate funds for military purposes, right? So now we have tech billionaires pledging $500 billion under the 1950 Defense Production Act for purposes of expanding AI completely unregulated. And prior to 2020, the US Department of Defense has said both AI and gene editing, mRNA, CRISPR-Cas9 technology, those two technologies, independent and combined with one another, are weapons of mass destruction. So we are now, and they also said artificial intelligence is a great threat to humanity because of having unmanned vehicles, or I should say autonomous unmanned vehicles, autonomous robots that can execute kill orders, or autonomous vehicles, drones or whatnot that can execute kill orders without human approval. They say these are huge threats to humanity. And now Trump has approved a $500 billion fund from the tech billionaires into, it looks like into the Department of Defense. And at the same time, he rescinded Biden's executive order for safe and trustworthy AI to ensure that AI would not be unleashed on the population without ensuring that it isn't a national security threat, a military threat, or an economic threat, meaning such as like everyone's enthralled with ChatGPT. Well, if you put out generative AI that can replace, I don't know, 1 million jobs as copywriters and editors in the United States, well, that's going to affect the economy. So at the same time that he's accepting these funds, he's rescinding all of the regulations that ensure that they're not a threat to our country and to our species.
I wasn't aware of the funds being allocated to a specific military budget. I'm definitely going to look into that a lot more.
But it's not a military budget. Trump is able to do this, right, I believe, based on Biden's prior executive orders. It's under the 1950 U.S. Defense Act, so they can actually they can actually instruct private businesses in the United States to channel resources to the U.S. military, right? And into the United States for purposes of national security. Another thing he can do under the 1950 Act is Trump can also prohibit the sale of certain real estate if he believes it's going to be used by enemies. So one of the things that he could have signed an executive order on is, I don't know, there's over 160, I believe, farmlands. Are you talking about probably tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of acres that are bought by, we believe, Chinese military members of the People Liberation Army, or CCP. So he could revoke all of that land that was purchased under this act as well, but that wasn't done.
That's correct. And we keep hearing about TikTok, people being concerned about the threat of TikTok and Chinese spyware or whatever. And yet we have literal physical, installations near, farmland or land being bought right next to military installations, US military installations. This is incredibly concerning. I want to say, just going back to your point about Biden's intent to sort of ensure the ethical use of AI and these sorts of things, because it's kind of a double-edged sword here, Karen, because when I look at what the EU's doing, for example, where they're saying, well, we need to regulate AI and ensure that it isn't used for nefarious purposes, what that actually is the government saying, well, we're going to limit your use of AI, but not ours, right? So that citizens can't actually utilize AI in a way to fight back against the destruction of the government's AI or the private tech firms that the government is working with and their AI. So there's that aspect when Biden Biden did that.
Well,
I saw.
I did read the act. It's only like, it's only like 10 pages long. And it does seem that there were members of our US government that were generally concerned about AI destroying our Constitution, our human rights, and our economy, and potentially our lives, right? So I think that act might have, that executive order did have some benefit to it. It was saying we need to put forward regulations. That's what the act was basically saying, to
Yes.
ensure that this is an economic destroyer. But also, January 14th, Biden signed another executive order of this year, January 14th of 2025, under the Defense Production Act of 1950. And he says to address the dramatic needs for power for AI data centers, which is what the $500 billion is for. It's for energy sources and infrastructure. And Biden, on January 14th, 2025, in this executive order, he signed an act so that the defense departments will lease sites to host gigawatt scale AI data centers. So now he's leasing out the U.S. defense, bases to support AI tech oligarchs. And Trump did not rescind this executive order.
Yes.
I guess,
Now, the interesting thing is from if you recall, just around the time of the elections, I can't remember exactly whether it was before or after, Mark Andreessen did an interview with Joe Rogan, was it? Or no, it wasn't Joe Rogan. Mark Andreessen did a video that went viral, an interview that went viral. I think it may have been on Rogan. And he was talking about how the Biden administration basically pulled all these AI oligarchs into a room and said, don't even bother doing startups because it's just going to be one AI to rule them all, and it's going to be controlled by the US government, right? So the regulations that potentially the Biden administration was seeking was control of AI, just like the EU. And it's possible. I'm not saying yes or no either way. What I'm saying is that now Andreessen's got a seat at the table. So do all these other tech oligarchs who are ultimate. Do we think they're not going to have a monopoly over AI? It's just a transfer from one monopoly to another is the way that I see it.
Again, I didn't read the executive order that Biden wrote for trustworthy AI that way. I did read it, cautioning about generative AI taking Americans' jobs. I mean, I don't think everyone in Washington, D.C. is evil. I think there are some people out there with good intentions, and they're saying, hey, look, let's not destroy our Constitution, destroy our human rights, destroy our economy, and destroy the lives of Americans. And, keep in mind, what has Elon Musk said? He said that he's going to create 10, 20 billion humanoids, and that AI can replace can do the job 100 times better and faster than any human, any jobs. He goes, I'm not even sure what an economy would look like at that point. And we'll be lucky if we're AI's pets. He's like, that would be a best case scenario. And he keeps saying how AI should be regulated, yet he is now the Department of Government Efficiency, whose intention is to completely deregulate industry, specifically AI. So I'm not sure, Maria, like I think there have been, I don't think every gesture, every executive order, every bill is all evil and and is for the downfall of America. I do think there are good men and women in DC, and they have good intentions, and I think they're being kiboshed, if you will. So I would recommend that people look at the executive order that Biden had put forward for trustworthy AI. It had a lot of merit, I believe.
Yes, and let me say, if the plan wasn't to just have one AI to rule them all, but we are wanting trustworthy AI, I would absolutely be for that in some regard. My actual position is cut it off at the knees. We don't want AI. It's going to destroy society. But that's just not realistic at this point because if the US doesn't do it, all the other competitors will. Every single country is in a race for it. And if you want to stay relevant and competitive in the future economy, you have to be in the race for it. So that's just the reality. It's a horrible reality, but it is the reality. So let's just be honest about it. But, I just don't think that the intentions behind a lot of these players are pure. And again, Mark Andreessen comes out and says all this stuff. Biden wanted a monopoly. Now Mark Andreessen has a seat at the table. Is he going to be better than the monopoly that Biden wanted? I don't know. I'm not so sure.
Well, is what he said valid? Because again, Biden's executive order was that there should not be a monopoly on artificial intelligence, and that no artificial intelligence should be released to the general public or used on the general public without first being reviewed, by the U.S. government as to determine whether or not it's a threat. And I really think a legitimate threat. I mean, they were talking about, is this going to wipe out jobs? Is this going to cause, for example, the merger of AI with creating these new biosynthetic genetic codes that can be injected into human beings to produce diseases or proteins that are foreign to our species? He's like, well, before we start doing that, it should be reviewed by the federal government and certain agencies. And speaking of Larry Ellison, when he said that you can make customizable cancer vaccines, there's a certain code of federal regulations under the FDA's CFRs, right? And if you make customizable gene therapies for one individual, the FDA says the manufacturer, the doctor, the FDA has no responsibility of recording any of the whatever the outcomes are of that one individual, because it's just a one-off event.
I think the biggest issue that we have is just the same issue that we had during COVID. Often, a lot of these representatives and sort of middle managers and lower of all of these organizations are not privy to what those at the top are actually doing and trying to achieve. And so, when we have any type of oversight from anyone these days, they don't understand AI in the ways that someone like you does, for example. I wonder how many people that are going to be involved in this new project have read Policy Horizons Canada, an official government publication called about biodigital convergence, for goodness sake. How many of them have actually read that? What do they actually understand how invasive this is going to be, how destructive this is going to be? I don't doubt some may understand, but most wouldn't, Karen. Most people are behind the ball on AI. And as is the case with all new technology, the ones that control it are often 40 years ahead of us. And we only find out when it's too late. And this is the biggest problem I see.
I agree with you. And unfortunately, I do believe that there are some very bright and brilliant people, or fortunately, I do think there's some very bright and brilliant and honest people in government and in the federal agencies. And one of the executive orders that Trump passed was that no code of federal regulations will be passed in the next 90 days. And while for some of the federal agencies, I think that's good news, but for example, the Department of Commerce just passed a code of federal regulations constraining the type of processing chips that can be produced, manufactured, and distributed in regards to their processing power for things like generative AI, whether it's used for espionage technology. So they were putting constraints on the sale of that, and that includes international sale to China, right? And specifically, this affects the NVIDIA stock. And now Trump said, "Hey, no, you federal agencies, Department of Commerce, you're not putting any constraints on anybody. No more code of federal regulations for the next 90 days." And unfortunately, Doge, and our, oligarchy of tech billionaires are running the country for the next 90 days, it looks like. And I think that's scary. I think that's actually terrifying.
I agree with you, and I want to raise some concerns with the audience from some articles I want to bring up. So this is the OpenAI's announcement announcing the Stargate project. This image is concerning to me, but I'll talk about that on a separate stream with people. The Stargate project is a new company which intends to invest 500 billion. So that's an important distinction, because people have said, how can Trump invest 500 billion without, any oversight? No, these guys are investing in the US. So they are investing this, not the other way around, which means that they have a lot of say of how this AI infrastructure goes. Okay, that's an important thing to note. They also say that they're going to deploy 100 billion immediately, that this infrastructure will secure American leadership in AI, create hundreds of thousands of American jobs, maybe initially, but then it's going to wipe out millions of jobs. I can promise you that. And generate massive economic benefit for the entire world, they say. Again, maybe initially until everyone's unemployed and depending on a universal basic or high income, as Elon Musk calls it. It says that this project will not only support the reindustrialization of the United States, again, maybe initially we're going to need some factories, but later on down the track, you don't need people anymore. And it also provides a strategic capability to protect the national security of America and its allies. So there is the military component, obviously, and I want to talk about that as far as what Palantir's just done following this announcement. But those things already, Karen, I mean, are there any other concerns you want to raise for other than what I've just said? From that paragraph.
In regards to Stargate 2 creating American jobs, what are those American jobs? They're Python and R programmers. Where is OpenAI and Oracle getting their Python and R programmers from? India, China, other nations under the H-1B program. So that those people will be in America. So technically they're American jobs, but they're not for Americans.
Right.
And I think and then as you said, once they're done teaching AI and creating, developing chips and whatnot and processors over an 18-month period or however long it is, they leave the country, and then we have American jobs wiped out. So I think that's concerning. And I think it's concerning that Stargate is a 1994 film, right? That's about the US military finding an alien interstellar transport system that takes people to a foreign planet in another dimension,
like
where
Mars?
Everyone is Egyptian and they worship the god Ra, who is the Egyptian original god, and he's the god of life and death. He controls the weather. He's kind of, he's not our god, but he's an all powerful, but he's an evil god that doesn't care about humanity.
Yes. Extreme occult overtones throughout this whole
Yeah.
thing. You've written a very interesting article. I want to get to that, but first I want to play this clip and take people through some other advancements so that they understand what's happening here. I want to play this clip from Larry Ellison. Actually, we're going to do two back to back. He announces the injections, the mRNA injections powered by AI, and then following that is Larry Ellison talking about how they are going to create essentially an AI police state where citizens will be forced to be on their best behavior. Take a look at this.
Once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again using AI, in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
The police will be on their best behavior, because we're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior, because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And it's unimpeachable. The cars have cameras on them. I think we have a squad car here someplace. But those kind of applications using AI, if we can use AI, and we're using AI to monitor the video. So if that altercation that occurred in Memphis, the chief of police would be immediately notified. It's not people that are looking at those cameras, it's AI that's looking at the camera.
So as you saw from that clip, Ellison is telling us that citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And he's envisioning a future where AI analyzes real-time data. Remember, we've spoken about quantum computing. We've spoken about the role that satellites play in that. We've spoken about the role that CERN plays in that. In fact, they were doing their White Rabbit synchronization for real-time internet during the Texas solar eclipse, if you all recall me reporting on that at the time. And so, but here is the thing. This is going to be happening, real-time data from this network to prevent crime and influence public behavior for a safer society. We are talking about pre-crime detection, Karen. We're talking about Minority Report. And, you know, it's really funny because in Minority Report, you have the oracles that are assessing pre-crime. And Larry Ellison is from Oracle.
Yeah, I think this is terrifying. I've done I've had many conversations with Mel K. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her
Yes.
work, but you know, she has consistently said over the last 4 years, what they've done in China is simply a preparation. It's a dress rehearsal for the big show, what they're going to do in America. And in China, it's what they call it is an open air prison system. And this is terrifying. I mean, Trump had said in regards to uh, illegal aliens being in the United States that he's going to launch a biometric surveillance system that will use land, sea, and air.
This is his
And you
previous
know,
term. He said these things. And I will say that Kristi Noem, the new DHS head, has echoed similar things with the digital border.
yeah, and this is in China what they call it. Well, we call it crimes against humanity. They refer to it as an open air prison system. So whether you're an American or you're visiting for a foreign nation, when you come in America, do you want to have 24/7 biometric surveillance of you, whether, you know, whether you're here doing business, whether you're going grocery shopping, whether you're sleeping in your bed at night, no matter what you're doing, they're saying we're going to have 24/7 surveillance. So they use LiDAR. LiDAR is like a form of a sonic, you know, like a sonic wave. So they, you know, walls, you can go through walls to monitor people now with these new AI surveillance technologies. And now with Stargate being funded, and now we have Starlink and Starshield, which has low orbit satellites. I think we might call those drones sometimes, right? If someone can, you know, scan over your house and use this LiDAR, radar-like technology to see exactly what you're doing with your spouse, with your children, you know, getting ready in the shower, in the bathroom. I mean, is this what America wants? And I don't think at this point, obviously, Maria, you and I were very outraged 4 years ago when we discovered what was happening with the COVID-19 and the mRNA injections, right? And obviously, outrage didn't work. But at this point, we need to have diplomatic, logical discussions about exactly what the government is doing, what they plan on doing. And if we don't agree with it, then we need to unite as American citizens, whether you're left or right, whether you're gay or Christian. We need to say we are human beings. We are not animals. We are not meant to be under 24/7 surveillance, being experimented on and exterminated at will. This is not something that we want for our country, our children, our lives, or our species. And I think that that's just where I want this conversation to go. And we have to stop having hopium. I mean, one of the things that Musk said that he loves about America, you know, is our endless optimism. You know, at some point, you know, we have to realize that we are being entrapped, and you know, and this system that Larry Ellison is speaking about is nothing more than a 24/7 prison system, right? And eventually we won't be allowed to travel, as you say, more than 15 minutes from our house. And, you know, they're also monitoring us right now, probably as we're speaking and when this goes live. And they can cut off your communication to the outside world if we're not allowed to engage with the outside world other than through this mechanism. And this can be cut off automatically, and so can our bank accounts. So this is moving very, very quickly. And I think, you know, Trump's supporters should have open, honest discussions with Trump and ask very straightforward questions and demand straightforward answers.
I want to get to the resistance to actually asking questions and accountability, because I'm seeing a lot of that. And so we will talk about that towards the end, Karen, because there has been a significant shift in the idea of what accountability looks like. But I just want to mention, you spoke about AI sort of looking through your walls. If people think that that is far-fetched, you can go back, I think 2 years ago, I showed how they were already looking at how AI through Wi-Fi can sort of map what you're doing in your house, and you know, it can sort of see where you're sitting,
Yeah,
and you know.
it's based on a sonar system, you know, like, and I think that's, and if people, you know, it's a great, go back and watch The Dark Knight Rises, one of the Batman series. And there's a scene when I don't know whoever the engineer is for Bruce Wayne goes to China, and he has to leave his cell phone, and they kind of show how the cell phone puts out these sonar waves and is a camera that can pick up that can down to the detail give you images of people, and keep in mind, like this sonar like AI technology, it was used in the movies for computer generated imagery, CGI. So it used to be back in the day, back in the 90s, to make an animated film took years, right? Because you had to rig everything from the skeletal system out. But then they have this new technology where they could simply scan, using sonar technology, they could scan a celebrity, and the entire, and in CGI and computer generated imagery, it's then that person is literally made from the inside out, from their skeletons to their heart, to their brain, to the cells, to their vasculature, to their tendons. And now they've got a fully rigged CGI of a celebrity, and they can now create the film so much faster. So that's still going back about 15 years or so. For people that don't know, I had my own agency in the biopharma industry, so I worked with a number of CGI artists. We produced educational videos and commercials and whatnot. So that's why I know this stuff. Yeah. So the concept of using this AI sonar, like I think it's called LiDAR technology, it's I guess we shouldn't be don't let your naivete, if you're not aware of this stuff, you know, manipulate you into not assessing the threats that are currently right in front of us.
And speaking of those threats, if you just do a Google search on Oracle CIA, you can see that Oracle was founded by Larry Ellison and two former co-workers, Bob Miner and Ed Oates, in 1977. The company's name comes from the code name of a CIA-funded project that Ellison worked on while at Ampex. The CIA was also Oracle's first customer. So you can see that history there, and you can see their products. It's a multinational computer technology corporation that specializes in developing and marketing database software, cloud engineering, so on and so forth. It helps businesses or the CIA manage and organize their data. But look at this. Oracle has a top secret cloud authorization, which gives the intelligence community and the DoD access to more than 50 Oracle cloud services. Oracle's cloud infrastructure is architected with zero trust principles. Now we need to talk about what zero trust means. For anyone who isn't aware, the future of the internet as described in the AI World Society, and if you've been watching Z Media's content for the past 3 years, you would know this term. But if you're not familiar with it, zero trust is a system where you are treated as a suspect on the internet in this mixed reality world unless you can prove that you have nothing to hide. So that means giving your ID for a digital identity to be established. It means having all of your data, absolutely everything that you do online, monitored to prove that you are a trustworthy individual all day, every day, 24/7. It is constant surveillance of your life. That's what a zero trust model is. And it openly tells you here that that's what Larry Ellison and Oracle are involved in. So what type of a society do you think America will be if there's a $500 billion investment into 500 billion, Karen?
500 billion.
Billion. I just want to make sure I had that right.
It's a $500 billion.
Yeah.
And Trump said that he expects to have up to $7 trillion invested, not necessarily into Stargate, but into the U.S. government by the end of the year. He had said that during that briefing with Sam Altman and Larry Ellison.
Well, let me just go into some other significant things that have happened, and then I want to show then I'd love to move to the Moderna patent.
I think people should watch the end of that interview, because he does say up to $6 or $7 trillion will be invested. And he also says that this money was going to go to China. Now, that kind of made my hair stand up on the back of my neck, because I was like, okay, if we agree that we need to win the war against AI against China, why not sign an executive order? Or why not have the Department of Commerce, like they were trying to do, make it illegal for U.S. companies to do business with China? And under the 1950 Defense Production Act, Trump, why not sign an executive order saying that if you're giving advanced AI technologies and chips and intellectual property over to China, we're going to consider that an act of treason, right? And that can be punished by the death penalty, as opposed to saying, look, China is invested in, and as we know from the reports that have been coming out of the intelligence agencies, out of agencies, out of Congress, out of Reuters, out of independent reporters, China is dead set on the world accepting the concept that individuals do not have human rights. Our human rights come from the government, and human beings are disposable. That is the psychological war that we have been fighting, and they won during COVID, which is why people were saying that if you don't get a COVID shot, you should be thrown into a COVID camp, right? That is saying you don't have individual human rights, you have no sovereignty over your body, you have no authority whatsoever, you do what the government says. So now what we're seeing is, originally Trump was saying we're at war with China. Now we know he's having meetings with Xi Jinping, yet all of the people, Sam Altman, well, specifically Elon Musk, Tim Cook of Apple, they all talked about, throughout 2022, 23, they love China. They love the people of China. They love the mindset of China. And so that is what is being adopted here. So our Constitution is being bought out, by tech billionaires so that we can adopt the model of China, which includes an open air 24/7 surveillance prison system.
Yes.
It also includes that we become the property of the US government, meaning our bodies will be experimented on with or without our consent. And I don't think that's what people want.
Well, no, and so I keep hearing this argument about, well, Trump is pro-choice when it comes to these mRNA injections, and we will get to some of your slides on that. But when it comes to these mRNA injections, Trump has always been pro-choice, anti-mandate. My argument here is, first of all, you will have, if you introduce this as part of society, you will have health insurance agencies, doctors, all this sort of stuff refusing to treat you unless you do this because XYZ, right? It's going to happen. And good luck if you have the funds to fight it legally, right? Because you'll have to. And of course, the insurance companies will have a vested interest in this because of their ties to Big Pharma, right? But the other problematic issue, and for me, the biggest one, Karen, is if you choose to get injected and I don't, and I accidentally come into contact with you and you shed your stupid juice all over me, which is what it is, it's stupid juice if you go and get this stuff, then I have been potentially inadvertently poisoned by you just by accidentally coming into contact with you. So do I need to become a hermit for the rest of my life? Is that what I'm sentenced to if we keep allowing the proliferation of this shedding technology in society? No, our choice is eliminated because of shedding.
Yeah. I think our choice is going to be eliminated because AI is taking over medicine, right? So something that Trump has said is that the COVID-19 shot should be a decision between you and your doctor. We know the whole medical community is being taken over by AI. Larry Ellison said now that we can make customizable mRNA cancer vaccines and identify the cancer in your body and treat it. He actually said with robotics. He kind of slipped up a little bit there with the mRNA injection. Now, I've read the patents. The patents show that they can actually cause turbo cancers. But that aside, if they're saying, and now we say cancer is skyrocketing, it's a huge, cost to our economy. It's a huge threat to our economy. It's costing lives. It's costing workers' lives. It's, and so it's a huge economic burden. And we know it's because of the COVID-19 shots why it's skyrocketing. Well, if then they say, well, we need to get COVID-19, we need to get cancer under control. It's a threat to national security because it's a huge threat to our economy. Therefore, you need to get your personalized, customized mRNA vaccine so that you don't get cancer.
Right.
If you don't get that, then you're too high of a risk. You're not going to be employable. Oh, and by the way, I've heard Callie Means talking about, hey, did you know or Casey, I'm not sure which one, you can get a prescription for food from your doctor and write it off as a tax deductible. Do not do that. The last thing we want as Americans is to get non-synthetic biology food. The only way we can get it is a prescription from our doctor. Right. So then also, if I didn't get my cancer vaccine, I'm sorry, I'm not giving you your prescription for your food this month until you get your cancer vaccine. This is where it's going, and if it's not going, then there needs to be clear red lines written, that it's not going that way.
Very good point.
What I'm concerned about is the hopium. I'm concerned about, even the left-wing media is concerned that the technology oligarchs are, you know, are in Trump's back pocket. I mean, literally, Elon Musk is in, like, I mean, gosh, could that bromance get any more intimate? They're always together, right? And so even the left-wing media is saying this is unnerving, and now they're buying the government. They just invested $500 billion into, or they're investing $500 billion into the government. And, you know, we need to have discussions about, like, where does technocracy, you know, the technocrats begin and the US Constitution end? Because technocracy and AI can only flourish to the vision that Elon Musk and Sam Altman and Zuckerberg want to see it flourish if the Constitution is scorched and we don't have human rights. So we have to have these conversations, and we can't be delusional being like, oh no, he's just keeping his enemies closer. If he was doing that, he wouldn't have revoked the trustworthy AI executive order. I mean, there seems to be an unfair balance of compromise in favor of technocracy and AI and against the Constitution, human rights, and Americans. It just, in the last 48 hours, that appears to be what's happened based on action.
I think you're right. And I think it's the perfect time to have this conversation. So this is from your Substack. Trump's broligarchy of AI tech billionaires concerns left-wing media. It sounds a lot like the divine right of kings, but with a pseudo-scientific spin. That's just a 21st century way of saying God says I'm the king and you all need to bow down, Brooke Harrington. So from the comedic writers of Saturday Night Live and Jon Stewart to the editorial board of Reuters, left-wing media outlets are subtly warning Americans about Trump's broligarchy of AI tech billionaires. I actually really want to play that SNL skit for everyone, Karen. We can watch it and we can comment on it. So here it is.
This time we're going to focus on what matters, like tech billionaires buying our democracy.
The thing about the broligarchs, and this is even different from oligarchs.
Stop. Okay. If that's not trademarked. Broligarch. Nice.
So we've had oligarchs in the past in America. We've had Carnegies and we've had Rockefellers. But aside from making sure they didn't get regulated or taxed too much, they kind of stuck to their own business. They just wanted to get rich. But the broligarchs really have an explicit political agenda, and it is essentially anti-democratic and almost monarchical. Well, they're going for noblesse without the oblige. They want all the privileges and none of the obligations.
In terms of charitable funding?
Philanthropy, any sense of social norms constraining them. I mean, what they're all about is nothing can constrain me. I mean, look what happened when the EU tried to impose its own laws on Elon Musk. J.D. Vance, not even the vice president yet, rolls up on the EU and says, you leave our boy alone or we're going to pull out of NATO.
They are explicitly, but then what is the political philosophy? Is it just the great man theory that you know, the irony of a populist movement relying on the great men to control all that happens?
It sounds a lot, actually, like the divine right of kings, but with a pseudoscientific spin. So that's where you get all the Elon bros talking about being high-T alpha males. That's just a 21st century way of saying, God says I'm the king and you all need to bow down.
So apologies, that wasn't the SNL skit. That was actually from the writers who bring us the SNL skits. Is that correct, Karen?
Oh, no. So no, I was just saying that the beginning clip is Marcelo Gonzalez Hernandez from SNL, which was from this last week. It was a 7.5 minute opening skit on MSNBC being distracted by Trump. And that was just that clip. I was saying, but the comedic writers for SNL and also Jon Stewart, but they're not the same comedic writers, right? The SNL writers are Jimmy Fallon writers. They're not they're not Jon Stewart writers. But then it's obvious that Jon Stewart and his team are concerned about this new broligarchy, as Brooke Jackson refers to it.
Now,
Brooke
it's
Jackson,
interesting.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Brooke
Harrington, yes.
I'm a big fan of Brooke Jackson too.
It's really interesting because I've said since sort of Christmas time, when I sensed this shift, and when the H1B debate happened and it was like shut up or else, and I thought, right, well, this is an example of, it's really great while we agree with this particular guy being Musk, and we see good things, but what happens when we don't? Now we know that if you don't agree and if you speak up, you risk being suspended or having your blue check mark removed, being silenced, and being threatened with war. And so from there, I saw the shift happening and started, listening to some people that really made a lot of sense, people that I wouldn't normally agree with, but that's being looked down upon. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But let's just have a look at some of her statements. So she's opining that she's more concerned with Trump's partnerships with the new American oligarchs than Putin's traditional relationships with Russian oligarchs. Per Ms. Harrington, Putin allowed Russian oligarchs to get rich from minimal government interference as long as they stayed out of his political business. In the case of American AI oligarchy, Ms. Harrington stated, what Trump has done is so extraordinary because he doesn't have that bright red line with the new oligarchs of America at all. He basically said, okay, you bought it, do what you want. And that's what you're saying here, Karen.
That is what she is saying. And I think, and I want to be clear that that clip from Saturday Night Live too, where Marcelo Gonzalez Hernandez says, during the MSNBC alternative media, he's like, this time we're going to pay attention to what really matters, which is AI tech billionaires buying our democracy. Now, I want to be clear. I have in the mid to late 2000s, early 2010, 11, 12, 13, I knew a lot of the writers at Saturday Night Live. Again, I had clients on the East Coast, so I went back there a lot. Pfizer and J&J and whatnot. And I want to be very clear that Lorne Michaels, who's not just the producer of Saturday Night Live, he basically owns NBC, MSNBC. He produces a lot of films. He produces a lot of the commercials you watch. He produces a lot of the news that you watch, right? Not one line gets past him that goes on that show. Not one line,
Right.
And so somehow or another, the left-wing media got the memo that America's being bought out by AI tech billionaires. So that's Saturday night. Then you follow up Monday night with Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, and he has this economic socialist on, Brooke Harrington, who talks about the AI tech oligarchy. And then she says, Trump basically said, you bought it, meaning America, do what you want with it. How did we not get the memo?
There's something very interesting happening here, and I'm gonna articulate what I think is going on in a moment. I just want to show here. First of all, America is a constitutional republic, so this whole line about democracy, even Musk's talking about democracy, it's not a democracy. And she's just sort of saying that what they're all about is nothing can constrain me. I mean, look what just happened when the EU tried to impose its own laws on Elon Musk. JD Vance, not even the VP yet, rolls up on the EU and says, "You leave our boy alone, or we're going to pull out of NATO." So we see that they are articulating these examples better than the right at the moment. And let me just spend a moment explaining what I think is happening here, Karen.
Before you do, I want to say one thing. I appreciate Jon Stewart as a comedian. I think he's brilliant. I don't agree with everything he says. You don't have to agree with everything everyone says. You don't have to agree with everything you and I say, right? But go on, Maria. I just want to be clear about that we can take elements of truth without taking, every word that someone says. Go on.
I absolutely agree with you. And, there's been times where AOC, who I think is, for the most part, really unhinged, has said some things where I'm like, wow, she has a point. I don't think that we, I think we need to be more open-minded, and I think that the left-right paradigm that those who wish to rule over us are constantly imposing on us needs to just be obliterated. But that's not to say I want to unite with people who think that cutting off children's genitals is a good idea. I'm just saying let's all be rational together and not be afraid of having these conversations. But what I think has happened, this is what I think has happened. Mm-hmm. The powers that be knew during COVID that the media would completely lose the trust of the people. In fact, the lockstep documents say that this would happen. And so what needed to happen was that there would be an alternative to the mainstream media proposed. In comes Elon Musk with his purchase of X, and all of a sudden you are the media now on X, except for the fact that X actively suppresses narratives that are not favorable to the owners or leaders at X, like just one huge example being the H1B debate. X is filled with bots that are actually, anti-Trump and pro-Trump. They exist on both sides. Anti-technocracy and pro-technocracy. These bots exist. And so who has the more powerful bots, though? Probably the owner of the platform. Who's in charge of the algorithmic manipulation of society to manufacture consent? The owner and controllers of the platform are. And so what happens is that when there is an active, a genuine movement of people, like with the H1B debate, where people are outraged, the social algorithmic manipulation of society happens, and we shift to different focus points because your feed determines what you're thinking about the most.
Yeah.
And so that is what has happened. And I think that I'm actually thinking that potentially the left-wing media and those who wish to control the right-wing media may even be working together to achieve a greater goal. And I say this because as soon as we see something from the left-wing media, let's just call them left-wing media, something like MSNBC, who are known to be the enemies of the people by the masses, right? Let's just consider that. When we see something out of there, we mock them, we laugh at them, we disregard everything that they say. They could even purposely be putting out those narratives so that we will mock, laugh, and disregard what they say. And X, people will then be on X, mocking, laughing, disregarding, meanwhile having embedded through algorithms that this is actually a good thing. This is what I'm seeing. X is essentially the new CNN. It's the new social manipulation tool.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there are good people with good intentions. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with it for the most part. But like Jon Stewart, for example, and let's even MSNBC. So keep in mind what happened. I think it was 2020. Brian Williams retired early or resigned, and so and I don't know, Jon Stewart was on leave during that time period. But remember when Brian Stewart said his sayonara to the world, he said, by the way, they're burning the house down with you and the baby in it. That was actually his final words. And, he is the anchor man he's originally from Canada, is hugely successful. And then Jon Stewart hadn't been welcomed back to the media. He was doing kind of these rogue podcasts, and I recommend looking at some of them if you go find them. He's questioning the whole COVID-19 thing. He was questioning a lot of things that was going on in politics, and then he's friends with Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert has him come on, and Stephen Colbert was very, very uncomfortable when Jon Stewart was like, "Well, let's see. Where did the virus come from?" He's like, "The lab is literally called the Wuhan Institute of Coronavirus Bat," whatever, he had said.
Right.
And so he had blown that up. And then they brought him back to the Daily Show. And on the Daily Show, he said a lot of things. He's definitely not been pro-Biden. He was not pro-Biden. He also wasn't pro-Trump, but I think he is putting some information out there. And so the problem is, if you watch that whole if you watch Monday nights, he says some derogatory things about J6 prisoners, right? Was that put in there by the writers, Maria, to trigger the MAGA movement, right? Because we are very defensive of our J6 peaceful protesters. They're not rioters, they're not insurrectionists, right? So is that being seeded throughout the Daily Show to trigger us to not listen to the other things? And I think I agree with you on that note, but I also think that that Jon Stewart is being genuine in many situations in some of the interviews where he is questioning what is going on currently with the US federal government. And he was genuine when he was questioning Biden's cognitive abilities and Kamala Harris, and he's very frustrated with the whole Democratic Party. So I think you're right that they seed these emotionally triggering stories in segments so that we disregard all the information that's being brought to us.
I definitely think that is part of it, and I think that X serves as the place to re-embed the ideas that they want in the masses, to reinforce the ideas that they want in the masses. And as Alex Karp of Palantir says, who recently partnered with SpaceX, he takes credit for the de-radicalization of the right wing in Europe. And how did his software do that? Well, through algorithmic manipulation, essentially, manipulating the masses to de-radicalize them. What is their version of de-radicalization? Probably that telling you that you are woke right, if you're having this conversation that you and I are having right now, if you're highlighting that some points that the left is making actually make sense. Not that we need them to make it, we're already making them, but the problem is that, they're highlighting it on their platform. We're not even allowed to have the conversation. We're labeled woke right if we have these conversations. And I think that is so insulting from people who have literally, these are the people that helped get Trump elected. To label them, these are the grassroots people, the people that spent hours and hours of their own time campaigning for this man, to label them now as woke right just because they won't get on board with what is essentially a technocratic libertarian agenda, which is not a conservative agenda, is completely insulting.
Yeah, I think AI is, 2025 forward, AI technocracy is COVID mRNA vaccines from 2020 through 2020,
Absolutely.
right? So we're not allowed to talk about this now with, we have to be fully supportive of Trump and whatever he does. And I think that's naive to do that. Again, there's not one man, one organization that's going to save us. We have to use discernment and assess situations by actions, not just by words. And I think that's really important that we do this. And I also want to point out, Maria, is people need to understand where their authority comes from. And as you and I believe, our authority comes from our Creator, our God, and through the power of Jesus Christ, we are given authority to speak truth, right? And to share the word and to share that we are created perfectly in God's image. Now, put that aside. Where are people getting their authority from today? You're getting your authority from AI bots, by the way, because this happened with me during COVID. I used to be a dance fitness instructor for a hobby, and people did no idea what I did for a living. And I was making posts on Facebook, not in a highly scientific way, but I had read the initial drug application. I had read Pfizer's phase 3 data, and I was putting out subtle little tidbits of information to people to not have their children vaccinated, to not get the vaccine, to do more research and whatnot. And at one point too, even during the COVID-19 lockdowns, I lived across from a huge park. I said, I'll do a dance fitness at the park. And people started attacking me, being like, stay in your home. You don't know what you're talking about. And when I started about the COVID vaccine, same thing. You just went on Google. You don't know what you're talking about. No one cares what you're saying. Look, you only got 4 likes on your last post. And these are from people women that were in my fitness class. And all of a sudden they're getting 6,000 or 7,000 likes. Now, keep in mind, I was a fitness instructor in San Diego. I had a lot of Facebook followers and stuff. I would get a lot of likes for doing that, right? Meanwhile, these people who don't have a lot, they don't have a big reach in Facebook. They're just local, whatever, school teachers, real estate agents. All of a sudden, they're getting thousands of likes, right, for going along with the COVID-19 agenda. And all of a sudden, they felt hugely empowered to share their opinions, right, and to share what they considered facts. Yet we, as conservatives and Christians, we are terrified to simply not agree with lies, to not say, I'm sorry, I don't have as much hope in Trump as I do today as I did pre-inauguration because of his relationship with tech billionaires, the executive orders that he's signing, right? And what I've seen him do in the last 48 hours. While I'm hopeful about the borders, while I'm hopeful about certain aspects of what he's doing, I'm not hopeful about this AI tech oligarchy and 24/7 surveillance state based on his actions. And I would like for our movement to unite and say, we have some questions that we would like answered as to what Trump sees the future of America and Americans and humanity versus how that compares to the AI tech oligarchy agenda. Where do we pan out?
Well, this is a very good point because it was the SoftBank CEO, Masayoshi Son, in his announcement, where he said, as part of Trump's announcement about Stargate, he said AGI is coming very, very soon and superintelligence is the goal, claiming this is what Trump meant when he referenced the golden age of America. Now, Trump did not correct him when he said that. Now, maybe that's not what Trump meant about the golden age, but Americans and Trump voters and conservatives need clarification around that. And by the way, everyone in the world who was hoping that Trump would be elected, everyone in every Western country was rallying for Trump to be elected on social media. These people were putting effort into this because they saw him as a hope for not only America, but the West. They didn't want America to fall. There is a deep affection for America from conservatives in every single country, be it Australia, the UK, Canada, it doesn't matter, New Zealand. These people wanted Trump elected. There were politicians in Australia supporting Trump, active serving politicians. So people are very interested in whether that is what Trump meant about the golden age. Is Masayoshi's son actually telling the truth here? And if so, is that different to what Americans perceived?
And in regards to, so everyone was ecstatic that the Trump signed an executive order saying the government cannot suppress our First Amendment right, our freedom of speech, right? But what happened in the lawsuits that were brought against Biden for the freedom of speech? They were saying, well, it wasn't the government per se, it was the social media platform, it was the business. So Trump's saying, look, government can't suppress freedom of speech, but the artificial general intelligence that runs X, well, they can.
It's a private company.
It's a private company, right?
So this is not really any different.
Is artificial general intelligence. So people, just in case people don't know, yeah. So they're saying, well, if the AGI determines what you're saying is dangerous misinformation, it's not the government, it's the AGI.
Yeah.
And so we're really going into very dangerous waters here. And I think I just hope that people will have these conversations. And by the way, Maria, I don't know if people understand the risk that you and I are having right now to have this conversation. We can't be the lone wolves. And I want to go on record. I'm not even clear what I brought up over the last couple of months, but there were targeted poisoning attacks on me earlier this month. And I was extremely sick and I had to go through a lot of processes to get back here again. And so, when you strain from the alternative media narrative, why is that so dangerous? I mean, I wish the enemies of America, and I know they're not going to be honest, but why is sharing truth and evidence or sharing an alternative opinion such a threat that you're willing to poison a single mother or kill her or terrorize her family? How is that such a threat? What is going on in our country? Right? And people are like, well, Karen doesn't have that big of a voice. I don't. I have 14,000 followers on Twitter. Probably 200 are real human beings, right? It doesn't, right? Who cares, right? But, but why is it that there is this need to not just silence, but to exterminate anyone that has an alternative viewpoint?
Well, that's the pattern. That's the pattern that something is being hidden. That's what happened to Dr. Nowak, who said that inside these injections was
graphene,
not just graphene, but graphene
parasites.
There was a specific wording that he used, and I want to make sure I get it right. It's actually still up. It's still up on our website. He is a renowned scientist.
But Maria, the things that we're talking about, they're not. I mean, when we first came forward, and I first came forward talking about the mRNA,
graphene hydroxide. Sorry, graphene hydroxide. Yes.
Yeah. So when I first came forward and talked about the nanotechnology, gosh, was that taboo? Wow, and Elon Musk says we need to merge humans with artificial intelligence. How do you think that's going to happen? It's through synthetic biology. It's creating technology, nanotechnology that mimics biology, right? That can be injected into the human body so that, we can emit signals that can be picked up by this artificial intelligence technology. That this isn't conspiracy theory, right? And I
Well,
know
if
for some
it,
people they're still getting their hands wrapping their heads around it. But now we're talking about an AI technocracy. The oligarchy is already saying what they want to do, right? I mean, Musk said, look, hey, AI is going to take over the world, and if human beings are in the way, it's the same way as building a construction site and an anthill's in the way. Bye bye antill, right?
yeah.
So, like, why can't we have conversations about, okay, what is the end goal here? What does this executive order mean? What does this partnership mean? You know, um, and why aren't people exercising their constitutional rights? Why, I feel like that we should be having these conversations. And that being said, at the end of my Substack, I did say technocracy is here and transhumanism is here, and we're not going to defeat it. It's not going to go away. But can we have the bravery? Can we have the courage to have the discussion to not deny nanotechnology, to not deny, artificial generative intelligence can replace 99% of human jobs? Can we not deny these facts and have logical conversations, use the Socratic method to understand exactly what is going on so that we can make decisions and not blindly, walk ourselves and our entire species into its own extermination?
We should absolutely be able to have those conversations. And again, what I was saying before is it's whenever you're not allowed to talk about something without being at this point labeled woke right, then it is emblematic of the fact that this is you've uncovered a conspiracy. Whenever something is
An actual crime.
an actual crime,
Yeah.
and the problem is that it's coming from the quote unquote right wing, all of these, brand new influences that have emerged on X, for example, predominantly, that's where I'm finding it, that, I don't really know too much about what they were doing during COVID, but now they're very active, especially coming up to the election. And now they're going to dictate to me what questions I can and can't ask. I'm sorry, I'm not in a cult, and I certainly, don't worship any man over God. My conscience is above everything else, and so, that's my angle when reporting on politics. And this is going to affect the whole world. Ultimately, what happens here is going to affect the whole world. Just briefly, and I do want to quickly go into your slides before we finish up, Karen, but just so people know what's coming down the pipeline, Palantir, who I just told you about before, whose CEO Alex Karp says he dreams of killing his enemies with drones, has just eyed a 200 million Shield AI investment valuing a drone startup at $5 billion. So according to sources cited by the information on Friday, Palantir Technologies is in advanced talks to invest in Shield AI as part of a $200 million funding round that values the autonomous drone startup at $5 billion. So what is this all about? Well, this is Shield AI's HiveMind software. So let's go to the HiveMind website, the world's best AI pilot, the first and only autonomous AI pilot deployed since 2018. You can see that it's called HiveMind. Again, we know what that's all about. Intelligent teaming, edge autonomy, denied environment operations. And when you go to what Shield AI looks to unleash, it's wanting to unleash its HiveMind autonomy software on multiple platforms. So it actually talks about AI-infused cognitive autonomy to enhance military capability. It talks about, how this is a massive growth sector in the defense industry. It's posited by friends and adversaries alike that whoever can possess AI supremacy will have a huge advantage on tomorrow's battlefield. If we just look at, for example, how when Lavender AI was being used in Gaza and it ended up targeting civilians, and Israel said, oh, whoops, it was a mistake. The AI did it. And that was it. That's all we heard about. Oh, sorry, the AI accidentally targeted civilians. This AI that's being used on the battlefield that is supposed to just go after terrorist leaders has just accidentally killed a bunch of civilians. Oh, well, it was a mistake. AI did it. We'll take a look at it later. I'm not sure that any follow-up has happened, Karen. And so regardless of where you sit on that conflict, it should absolutely terrify you that AI powered drones are already making the quote unquote mistake of taking down civilians instead of other targets.
Oh, absolutely. But this also, it feeds into, again, the executive order under the Defense Production Act of 1950 and the formation of Stargate, right? So when we're using X, when our children are using TikTok and they're making their fun videos, right? What's going on there? The AI platforms, and we know this was being gathered by the People's Liberation Army, the CCP. It was gathering facial recognition that could be sent into a military drone and then put on an assassination attack, right? So these are concerns, right? Is this what we want?
Well,
And
just if I can just pause you, Karen. So this is another thing on Shield AI's, Brandon Seng, the revolution of AI-enabled autonomous piloting, and they actually talk about drone swarms here. So they say that from its smart AI-driven Nova drones, it can help ground forces clear urban environments in close quarters combat, or if they want to corral people in a rural area into a smart city, maybe they want to clear out those areas, to its MQ-35 VBAT drone that can be launched and recovered vertically and can scan vast areas of territory in a swarm, all leverage the company's HiveMind AI pilot for command control. So we're already now talking as well about AI swarms. I don't know if anyone understands how terrifying an AI swarm is. An AI drone swarm. You don't know who's controlling it. You don't know what objectives it has. Has it been programmed to wipe out everyone in that area? Who knows? Lavender did it. This is a terrifying future.
it is. I mean, and I think people think of the drones coming and they're going to be bullets, right? Well, no, they could release a biological or a chemical weapon. They can release a neurological weapon that could cause a crowd to start acting violently, right? They could release a biological weapon that produces foreign proteins that we call viruses inside the body, and cause hemorrhaging from the eyes, and vomiting and fevers and whatnot. So the drones can be used to deliver many different types of weapons. They could emit electromagnetic frequencies, electromagnetic pulses, resulting in Havana syndrome, which is severe cognitive dysfunction. Some people even get permanently brain damage, brain dead from them. So this is the world that we're saying should not be regulated, and it all can be kept secret under military operations. And I think it's important to have these conversations to say this is not the world that we want. And I think we need to unite regardless of our political background, regardless of our religious, regardless of even our sexual orientation. This is not a world that I don't believe any human being that has any type of empathy, far from being someone of the dark, triangle, the dark triad, being a narcissistic, sociopathic, killer, I would believe that no human being would want this future.
I agree with you. I think just briefly, Karen, we need to discuss the issue of shedding and what's actually in the Moderna patents. I know you have a couple of slides. Let's just go through those quickly, because I really want people to understand that this is not about choice, and pressure needs to be put on President Trump. He has a history of listening to his base. Just look at the Jan 6 example. And so people need to not be afraid and need to get vocal about this. Let's go into Karen's slides.
So, Maria, as I mentioned, you had mentioned Larry Ellison wanting to talk about the mRNA vaccines, and I went back and got some slides that you and I have gone over. Gosh, it's well over 3 years ago, and I just want to do a quick throwback when they talk about the biomimetic surveillance. And you had sent me an article saying that the FDA, specifically only Janet Woodcock, had certain access to information that the military had, and that Google was going to have a 2-year surveillance on people that got the Operation Warp Speed COVID-19 injections. Well, this was the patent that was filed for all COVID-19 injections that are registered with the World Health Organization, including Pfizer and Moderna, by Gail Elric. It was filed in Israel, the United States, and the United Arab Emirates, and it showed that people would be giving off a Bluetooth signal, and they'd be able to identify those who were unvaccinated. So people could, I think it's our first interview in 2021. People can go back and watch it. But I wanted to bring up, I had gone over this I think with you and one other interviewer in 2021, and it just didn't pick up any momentum, but I had shown that there was plasmid DNA and that the mRNA was programmed to cause accelerated cancers. So when Larry Ellison said that you're going to get customized customized mRNA cancer vaccines, I just want to show the viewers just a couple snippets of what the patent of Moderna's master patent for the mRNA injections actually shows. So it's patent number 10703-789. And again, it's for the modified polynucleotide for the production of secreted proteins. And you can see here, just section 74, it's all about the different mRNA technologies that are in here. I'm not going to go through a lot of this, but it also discussed the use of the plasmid DNA in order to produce the foreign proteins within the human body. There's also discussions of luciferase in here as well, to actually diagnose and also allow for transfection, so allow human cells to produce these foreign proteins. Now, this is what's interesting. Now, as you go through the patent, it says right here, this is measurements of cells. The mRNA was programmed to find HeLa cells. HeLa is one of the most aggressive forms of cancer known to man. So HeLa cells are produced out of HEK, which is human embryonic kidney cells. They then produce these HeLa cells. They expose them to mRNA nanoparticles that are encoded with vascular endothelial growth factor. And so what happens is the nanoparticle finds the cancer cell, the HeLa cell, and it's encoded with vascular endothelial growth factor. And what you see is those HeLa cells that were treated with the mRNA that was encoded with vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF, which is responsible for the growth of blood vessels, which is needed for accelerated tumor growth. It's also needed for embryonic development. What do you see? You see, look, exponential growth of blood vessels. Blood vessels are needed again for tumor growth. If it's untreated, there's no actual growth of blood vessels. So this is needed for what's called angiogenesis, which is the process of growing a tumor or growing blood vessels and growing tissue, right? It's used in embryonic development. Go on. So there's now factor 9. Factor 9 was encoded in the mRNA to find blood, to find it, to go and identify blood vessels and to produce it. So when you produce factor 9 in your circulatory system, what happens? Blood clotting. Again, when they encoded the mRNA to produce factor 9 in the for human cells to start producing factor 9 in the body, what do you see? You see an increase in factor 9, you see an increase in blood clotting. Going on, this now is this is a type of protein, GCSF, that is needed for bone marrows to produce white blood cells. Why do you need white blood cells? You need white blood cells, right, to fight cancers. That's why. So typically people who have cancers have very low white blood cell counts. What happens when they encode the mRNA to produce GCSF and to find the HeLa cells? It makes the HeLa cells increase the GCSF, lowering the white blood cell count. In untreated HeLa cells that were not encoded with the mRNA, it had no effect on the white blood cell count, on the protein factor that decreases white blood cell.
It's being created to cause cancer.
Now, again, and now here's interferon alpha induction, right? So interferon alpha has, I just pulled this for you, it has anti-tumor activity. It actually triggers your white blood cells, your killer cells, the first line of defense to go in and attack viruses and attack cancers and take them out. That's what interferon alpha has. It's so important in our immune system. It's part of the immune balance. You need a balanced immune system. You don't want your humoral response, your antibody response to be too strong and your white blood cells, your innate response to not be activated, right? You want them to be balanced. So you want the first line of defense to go. This tells your first line of defense to stand down, right? And then it allows the exponential growth of cancers. What happens when they encode the mRNA to find cancer cells and then have those cancer cells produce interferon alpha? It goes through the roof. Left untreated, it's very low, very, very low. So these were designed to cause the turbo cancers. Now I understand the SV40 theory, because SV40 is an oncogenic gene, but as Dr. Judy Mikovits has told us, SV40 has been found in childhood vaccines for decades. So we would have seen toddlers with stage 3, stage 4 turbo cancers. We haven't seen that over the years, right? So you need the factors, the proteins that cause angiogenesis, that causes vascular growth and tissue growth. And that's what this mRNA, it's encoded to find the cancer cell in your body and then to turbo that cancer to produce the proteins and the growth factors it needs to create metastatic tumors. So on that note, I have got to run.
I appreciate it, Karen.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to close for this segment for the audience. Thank you again for your time. I appreciate it. I know we'll chat soon. You take care.
Thank you. God bless, and be brave and very courageous, people. It's a fight for our lives. Thank you.